Hey everyone, welcome to an info video. This one we're going over the Sunday Night Showdown Slate, the Chargers versus the Steelers. Not the most exciting game in the world. It's only a 41-point over-under, and the Steelers are on their third quarterback, so might be tough sledding for them, but it's still football nonetheless, so we're going to be breaking it down. Anyway, before we continue, if you could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets I build every single week, links in the description below for my Patreon. And I think that's just about it, so let's get into it. We're just going to pretty much go down the list here and talk about the guys, all the guys actually, even the guys I don't really have much interest in. So up top, we're going to start off with Keenan Allen at 10,400, and he's pretty much the lock of the slate this week, and he's my number one option for the captain spot, despite the high price tag he has. Everything's lining up for Keenan Allen to have a big bounce back game after two lackluster performances. He gets a fantastic matchup in the slot versus Pittsburgh, who's giving up 31.9 points per game to slot receivers this season, which is tied for most of the entire league. Keenan Allen runs the slot roughly 50% of the time, which means the majority of the time he will face off versus slot corner Mike Hilton, who's giving up 0.61 points per route covered this season and 2.82 yards per route covered, which are both second worst in the league. And also their top corner, Steven Nelson, is out, so that's just a big downgrade for the entire Steelers secondary, which is an upgrade for the Chargers receiving options as well. And last season, he feasted versus Pittsburgh, where he went for 14 catches for 148 yards and one touchdown when the Steelers were trying to guard him with linebackers, which obviously did not work out. He still owns a massive 27% target share, 67% weighted opportunity share, and 37% market share of the team's air yards, and he's third in the league in air yards as well. The addition of Melvin Gordon will and has hurt his production, but he's still a main focal point of this offense and an elite talent and in a great matchup. So Keenan Allen makes a ton of sense for me, even though he's had two bad games the last 2 weeks, but I think this is the week he bounces back, and I really do like getting him into that captain spot, even despite the price tag. Next guy is his quarterback, Philip Rivers, at 10,200. So you got to like Rivers here, as the Chargers have the higher implied total between the two teams, and the Chargers have a much better offense right now. Now, the Steelers' defense has been pretty solid recently, but they are on the road, and it's not the easiest matchup in the world versus the Chargers, who they got weapons. They got Rivers, Eckler, Gordon, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. So they're not like a lousy offense by any means, but Pittsburgh has been above average versus the quarterback position this season, allowing the 13 most points per game at 17.9 points allowed. But you won't catch me fading Rivers here at home, despite the Steelers being 7th AVOA versus the pass. I think you pretty much got to fit in both quarterbacks on this slate. I mean, I guess you could fade Devlin Hodges just because he's Devlin Hodges, but definitely like fitting in Philip Rivers, as I think you're going to pretty much have to have that Keenan Allen Philip Rivers combo. Even if you don't have them in the captain spot, you have to at least put him in the flex spot. Our next guy is our first Steeler in James Conner at 9,400. So let's just start off with mentioning that Jalen Samuels is out of this game, which means Conner should be in line for an even heavier workload, coming off an 80% snap rate last week, while Samuels saw roughly 25% of the snaps, and he was also in working the Wildcat quarterback spot as well. I really can't imagine Benny Snell makes a huge impact on this game, so I think James Conner is in line for more work. The matchup is pretty good, as the Chargers are 25th DVOA versus the run, and are average in terms of points given up to the position at 24.5 points per game given up. I do have concerns about the Steelers being able to stay in this game and establish the run, but he's been consistently involved in the passing game each week besides last game, and he hasn't really been efficient whatsoever this season, so you're kind of really banking on a touchdown here with James Conner. Now, I'm not saying to absolutely fade James Conner, but he's not one of my favorite plays on the slate, but he's going to get guaranteed work, so I wouldn't say fade him. If you're playing one lineup, you might feel safe having Conner in there. I mean, he's probably not going to give you a ceiling game or anything. I don't see him getting 26 points. I mean, the one good game he's had this season was versus Cincinnati, which everyone has good games versus Cincinnati. Other than that, he's been pretty bad. 10 carries for 21 yards, 11 carries for 33 yards, 13 carries for 43 yards, 10 carries for 42 yards, 14 carries for 55 yards. You need him to score a touchdown to save your fantasy day, and if he doesn't, I think you're probably in for a rough outing. But if he's involved in the passing game, I mean, he should be fine. It'll help boost his floor, which he has been in recent weeks, just not last week. Then Austin Eckler at 9,200. I much prefer him to James Conner this week. He seeded his bell cow role into more of a pass catching role, as he had 3 carries last week compared to Gordon's 12. But he did have an absolutely massive 16 targets for 15 catches last week. Melvin Gordon also had 7 targets, but Austin Eckler was the main pass catcher in that game. He was on the field for 65% of the snaps last week, and he was also lining up in the slot 28% of the time, so it's not like he's going away, and he still has a big role in this offense. And, he's just not going to go away because Melvin Gordon's back, because he's just too good to keep off the field. So definitely going to be a key piece of this offense. Pittsburgh is giving up 26.1 points per game to running backs this season, and there's enough points to go around for Gordon and Eckler to both be viable. And Eckler will be a big factor in the passing game, boosting his form PPR scoring like DraftKings. So, he makes a ton of sense. One problem is there's a chance LA comes out and boat races the Steelers, leading to a ground-heavy attack, and it could be the game they look to establish Melvin Gordon. But if this game's close, which Vegas doesn't really have it as a blowout, I think Austin Eckler will be heavily involved and should be able to get you there on receiving work alone. So do like Austin Eckler despite Melvin Gordon being back. And speaking of Melvin Gordon, he comes at $200 cheaper than Austin Eckler at $9K. And I kind of just explained the situation, so I'm going to keep this one short. He's going to be first in line for carries, but he was incredibly inefficient last week with a sub 3 yards per carry. But he still saw 12 carries compared to Eckler's 3, and he also had 7 targets. So, he had 19 chances for opportunity there, and I'll take that all day. I do like the Chargers' chances to get to an early lead, and I think we see a pretty solid day out of Gordon if he can get himself into the end zone. If I have to pick one, though, give me Eckler just because of that huge receiving upside he has. But I don't think either are bad plays, but again, I prefer Austin Eckler. Juju Smith-Schuster at 8,800. I gotta say, I'm not too excited for the passing attack here for the Steelers with Devlin Hodges at quarterback, but I do expect them to be trailing, meaning they're going to have to throw the ball. He's going to see a lot of Desmond King in the slot, which is where Juju plays the most, and that's where Desmond King plays all the time. And let me tell you, King was downright elite last season, but he hasn't been as locked down this year, but still LA is only allowing 15 points per game to opposing slot receivers, which again is where Juju plays most of his snaps. He will also have Devlin Hodges throwing him the ball, which makes it his third quarterback of the season, so it's definitely a downgrade for him. Obviously, Juju's a talented receiver, and he's still going to get his. I'm just not sure exactly how much his will be. And I'm just really not excited about this Pittsburgh offense. You're going to have to play one of these Steelers, and I think Juju's possibly a better play than James Conner. He's cheaper, and I do think the Steelers are going to have to throw the ball. And, James Conner has just been absolutely inefficient this season, so Juju might be the better play there, and he's a little bit cheaper. But, again, I'm not too excited for the Steelers passing attack, so not like an absolute core play for me. But I do think he's in play. It's not someone I love. Mason Rudolph is out with that concussion where he just absolutely knocked out last week. So that's going to mean Devlin Hodges is the quarterback. And, oh gosh, it's kind of gross. But whenever we get a quarterback this cheap on showdowns, besides Daniel Jones on Thursday versus New England, we tend to want to plug them in because it's fairly easy for them to hit value. And I would tend to agree with that. I'm more than likely going to have to get some Hodges in my lineup. And the Chargers are 25th DVOA waivers to pass. But they are only allowing 16.7 points per game to quarterbacks, which is, it's above average. Not for Devlin Hodges, but for the Chargers. But he does have some mobility, which will help boost his floor for fantasy. I don't think he's going to, knock your socks off by any means, but he should be able to get the job done at 8,400. And I do think you're probably going to want to get him in at the flex spot and get both quarterbacks in for the showdown slate. So wouldn't fade Hodges. Probably want to get him in if you're making one lineup just to be on the safe side. Mike Williams at 7K. I do have some interest in Mike Williams. He was very busy last week coming off the injury. He played 88% of the snaps, and he saw a hefty 13 targets. But he only came down with 6 of them for 74 yards, which isn't fantastic, but I did like that he had 13 targets. Now, I do expect more of those targets to shift to Allen this week with his fantastic matchup, but that's not to say I don't want any exposure to Big Mike. He owns a 32% market share of the team's air yards, which is right behind Keenan Allen's 37%. He's also yet to score a touchdown this season, despite having double-digit touchdowns last season, so he is due for some positive regression in that department. He's the fourth option on the Chargers, though, behind Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, and Keenan Allen. So I'm not overly interested in him, but I do have interest because also of note, Steven Nelson, who's the Steelers' top cornerback, has been downgraded to out, and then they're expecting Artie Burns to be the starter. And if you guys don't know who Artie Burns is, he's pretty bad. So this is a pretty soft matchup for Mike Williams. So I do think he's in play at only 7K, and he's substantially cheaper than Keenan Allen. So if you want to be really different on the slate, you can fade Keenan Allen and play Mike Williams instead. But I'm just saying I would not recommend to fade Keenan Allen. You can get both in your lineups, and I think that's fine too. Next guy for the Steelers is Deontay Johnson at 6,400, and he's interesting. So James Washington is out, which means Johnson will see an increased target share this week. The problem is he lost his quarterback, Mason Rudolph, who he looks like he happened to have a pretty good connection with. Last 3 weeks, he's been the guy in this offense, leading the team in target share at 22% and market share of air yards at 38%, both ahead of Juju, which might sound a little surprising. But still, we might have to throw all those numbers out the window with Hodges at quarterback this week, but it's still nice to see he's been heavily involved recently, and he's much cheaper than his teammate Juju, who will see the tougher individual matchup of the bunch. So Deontay Johnson, I think he's fine. He's been pretty good ever since he's took over the Dante Moncrief role. So don't hate him, don't love him either, but you're going to have to play one Steeler, and I think he's a candidate for that. James Washington is out. Not going to play, obviously, backup quarterbacks. Hunter Henry, so it's kind of interesting. At this price, he's too risky for me, even if he does play, considering this quote from Coach Lynn. Quote, if it feels good, then yeah, I'll put him out there for a few plays, unquote. So I assume they're going to take it lightly with their talented tight end if he does end up playing. I know he practiced in full, but still, you really can't trust someone, especially after the coach said he's going to throw him out there for a few plays. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to pay $5,600 for someone that's barely going to be on the field. So I mean, you might catch a pass, maybe it's a random touchdown. I have no idea, but myself, I can't pay near $6,000 for someone with this injury status. If by chance he's somehow a full go, then yeah, I'll have interest, but that's not going to be the case. So probably not going to want to play any Hunter Henry. Probably rather play the backup tight ends that are a lot cheaper. Vance McDonald at $5,400. Again, really don't love any of these Pittsburgh pass catching options, and it's tough to project how they'll actually produce with Hodges under center because we don't have a big sample size with him. I think we've only seen 9 pass attempts with Hodges, so it's hard to project. Chargers have been middle of the road though versus tight ends this season, allowing 11 points per game. Maybe Vance gets a random touchdown. If he doesn't get a touchdown, I think you're going to be pretty disappointed playing Vance McDonald. Chargers defense, yeah, you gotta have an interest in the Chargers defense. I've kind of been bashing on all these Steelers, so that means I'd have to like the Chargers defense, and they make sense in this matchup. Steelers are on their third string quarterback and only have a 17 implied point total. They've also been very solid this season. They've scored 14 points, 11 points, 4 points, 8 points. Nothing too mad about. 2 points versus Indy, but other than that, pretty solid. And ownership may be a little bit high on them because people are going to see what the Patriots defense did in the showdown on the Thursday slate. So people are going to be like, okay, I got to get the Chargers defense in because they're going against the third string quarterback at home. So Chargers defense does make sense. Not a core play by any means for me, but yeah, I don't mind throwing them in. Benny Snell, I just don't think he's going to make too much of an impact to pay off his salary at $4,400 despite maybe if he gets a touchdown, but I just can't bank on that. Jackson's not playing. Badgley's not playing. The kickers are what they are. If they make their field goals, they're going to be fine. If not, I do prefer the Chargers kicker, though, just because there's going to be more scoring opportunities. So if I had to pick one, going to go with McLaughlin. Steelers defense going to pass on because I do like all the Chargers offensive options. So I don't really want to play the Steelers defense versus them. Travis Benjamin just has too low a volume for me to be too interested in. Dante Moncrief. Man, the guy just sucks so bad. He can't catch a football. He's a complete dumpster fire. But he does have potential to see some extra run with Washington out. But no one I'm too excited about playing. Vanette, no thank you. Green. I mean, all of these guys are pretty gross, and you're just kind of hoping to get lucky with maybe catches his lone target or not. But, I mean, Switzer's fine. He's going to be the emergency quarterback. So, hey, maybe you get lucky. And I'm not wishing an injury on Hodges. But if Hodges gets hurt and you play Switzer, he might go in a quarterback, and he might get you some fantasy points at 200. So maybe you take a random shot at Ryan Switzer if you're building multiple lineups. Again, not too interested. He only played on special team snaps last week. Johnny Holton, I think he's somewhat interesting. He might garner some ownership at only 200. He's in line for some extra work as the wide receiver 3 role with James Washington being out. So at only 200, I guess he's a fine value play. Not someone I'm too excited about. He did run one route last week and got a target for 4 yards and got 0.4 fantasy points, but at 200, if you can get me a couple or few targets, I think that's worth it at 200. And he's going to allow you to fit in studs like Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, Phillip Rivers, and Keenan Allen. So I actually don't mind taking a shot at Johnny Holton. Should be in line for some extra work this week. Not like it's going to be too much extra value work, but still nonetheless, I don't hate it. As for budding lineups, like I said, I like Keenan Allen a lot. So if I plug him in the captain spot, then I want to get Phillip Rivers in, and I'd possibly try to get Hodges and Eckler in. I'm not sure how this is going to work. Maybe, depending on what the news is for Holton, maybe you can fit him in. That gives you 6,400 left. You could fit in a guy like Deontay Johnson. Don't absolutely hate that. Again, don't love playing Holton. So maybe if we take away Eckler, and then we run, I don't know, someone like Mike Williams, save some salary there, get the Chargers kicker in. Again, I'm just doing this on the fly, so I don't actually know how my lineups are going to look yet. I don't actually love that at all, but just playing around with it. Maybe one of those 200 guys pops off, and I kind of like that better at the start of the scrub lineup. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. If you guys have not watched my Week 6 content yet, I have a whole bunch of videos out already. I just made my chalk and pivots video last night, so I'd recommend checking that out. See you guys in the next video, and I wish you guys the best of luck on Sunday.